Hey everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me today. Take a second to share this, let people know. I'm sure many of you remember and this, by the way, this goes along the ongoing thread of how Russiagate collapses and all the anti-Russia. Russia's attacking us. Russia owns Donald Trump. Russia owns Bernie Sanders. Russia owns Jill Stein. Russia owns anybody who doesn't run around with a Hillary T-shirt on, et cetera, et cetera. This goes along that line that all of those stories ultimately collapse. I mean, if you really keep up with them, if you keep up with the nitty gritty, with the day to day, they all, when the truth comes out, collapse. And our mainstream media basically doesn't report when they collapse, or they'll report one article, whereas they spent 5 days straight, 24/7, talking about the initial allegations. Then when it collapses, one article should suffice to tell you that they were completely wrong and they've got their head up their ass. So this one goes in that thread, goes in that genre of let's watch all of this garbage collapse. This was the story, you might recall, from a few months back, that it came out, and this was right at the time that Donald Trump said he was going to withdraw troops from Germany, 10,000 troops from Germany, and he was going to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. So he says that, and a day or 2 days later, big major story, right? All the networks. It comes out, Russia is paying Taliban bounties to kill American soldiers. Now, I have spent time debunking this before, but there's an update. And the mainstream media went fucking crazy, right? Head on fire. Rachel Maddow was literally showing photos of soldiers who she claimed Russia had paid to have killed, U.S. soldiers that Russia had paid the Taliban to have killed, literally putting up photos on the screen. Here are the people they're killing. Now, I where she got those, and she just made them up in her head, I guess. But anyway, at the time, those of us, and maybe Aaron Mate did some of the best stuff on this, but those of us who knew to not just take anonymous deep state sources on this crap, said, well, what's the evidence? Where's the proof? And no one could point to any proof other than, somebody at the CIA said so. That was the entirety of it. So the story started getting picked apart. And now we're several months removed from it, right? Well, here, I'm going to show you, is an article from, I believe, today or yesterday. I think it's today. U.S. Intel walks back, claims Russians put bounties on American troops. So it has now backed to the point of basically not being anything. And in the headline here, this is from Daily Beast, which, is a largely garbage outlet, but this is a true story. And by the way, Daily Beast gives into Russiagate, believes Russiagate, all that shit. But in this case, they're reporting because they had to, what Biden said. And the subtitle says Donald Trump might have been right to call it a hoax. And within the article, it's pretty fucking hilarious. I mean, how pathetically they fell for this garbage story. But they start off saying it was a blockbuster story about Russia's return to the imperial great game in Afghanistan. The Kremlin had spread money around to the long-time battlefield to kill U.S. forces. But on Thursday, the Biden administration announced that U.S. intelligence only had low to moderate confidence in the story after all. Translated from the jargon of spy world, that means the intelligence agencies have found that the story is, at best, unproven and possibly untrue. And I think Daily Beast is being a bit gentle there. That means untrue, okay? At best, unproven, but likely untrue. And this is I think what makes this new is that this is even the Biden administration and the Daily Beast, standard liberal outlet, pro mainstream neoliberal garbage, anti-Russia at every turn. Even those outlets are saying, we think this has been debunked. So here's a quote. The U.S. intelligence community assesses with low to moderate confidence that Russian intelligence officers sought to encourage Taliban attacks, U.S. and coalition personnel of U.S. coalition personnel in Afghanistan in 2019 and perhaps earlier. This information puts a burden, and I love. This is maybe the best line of the whole thing. This is continuing to quote the Biden official. This information puts a burden on the Russian government to explain its actions and take steps to address this disturbing pattern of behavior. You just said there was no pattern of behavior. Like, literally, you just said that this garbage story about Russia that was false. And yet then the Biden official says, so explain yourself, Russia. This would be like if you accuse someone of stabbing you, you're like, you totally stabbed me. And your friend's like, no, I really didn't. And you're like, you totally stabbed. No, I really didn't. And then you realize you haven't even been stabbed. And you go, okay, I have relatively low confidence in the idea that you stabbed me because I haven't been stabbed. But now explain your pattern of behavior. What? You just said there was no pattern of behavior. I mean, this is how backwards and upside down it really is. If for anyone who read the novel Catch-22, it really is Catch-22. This is just backward, upside down world where a Biden official or a U.S. government official can come out and say, hey, we basically totally made up that bullshit we used to make sure Trump wouldn't withdraw troops. And now we would like for Russia to explain themselves. We totally made up that thing about Russia. Now, Russia, you explain yourself. It is such a backwards, upside down world of their propaganda. It's unbelievable. Like, even for those of us who are skeptical, it's unbelievable. To read a little of the article, to go back to the article. And so the next sentence says, significantly, the Biden team announced a raft of sanctions on Thursday. So they're sanctioning the Russian government despite coming out and admitting this story was false. Holy fucking shit. It then says that the sanctions are also prompted by Russia's interference in the 2020 election. What interference in the 2020 election? Like, you haven't even put forward any fake interference claims like you did in the 2016 election. The 2016 election, you claimed that a Facebook ad that 4 people saw somehow rigged the election of Bernie Sanders in a banana hammock, like fucking that did it. At least you had that ridiculous claim. In 2020, you told us the elections are completely legit, nothing wrong with them, and yet you're still pretending Russia interfered? What in the flying fuck are you talking about? So they just put sanctions, more sanctions on Russia. And by the way, for anyone who thinks Trump was easy on Russia, there were actually far more sanctions on Russia under Trump than under Obama. And Trump also pulled out of a lot of weapons deals that Russia was a part of and wanted to be a part of, obviously, or they would have pulled out. Let's see. We have noted, so this is continuing to quote the official, senior administration official. We have noted our conclusion of the review that conducted on the Bounties issue, and we have conveyed through diplomatic, intelligence, and military channels strong direct measures on this issue. But we are not specifically tying the actions we are taking today to the matter. Oh, that's good to hear. You're not tying sanctions against Russia to a matter where you just said it didn't fucking happen. According to the officials, so the bounty story, they say the alleged bounty story came from detainee reporting. You think, meaning basically people that they were torturing, even if they're no longer doing the car battery strapped to your balls torturing, they're still doing the lock you in solitary confinement kind of torturing. So they've got other forms of torture they continue to do. So basically they're saying that a detainee was being tortured and told us shit just to basically stop the torture, which is all of the information that someone gives you when they're being tortured is generally either false or unreliable because they're being fucking tortured. It says that it probably came from detainee reporting, raising the specter that someone told the U.S. aligned Afghan jailers. And by the way, these are Afghan jailers. So even if the U.S. claims to have stopped various kinds of torture, even though they continue the imprisonment torture, even if they've stopped certain kinds of torture, often they'll give prisoners to Afghan jailers who support, who work for the U.S. government. And how do you know they're not torturing them? They haven't agreed to the same things that the U.S. military might have. Now we, as Obama said in the past, we did torture some folks. Afghan jailers, what they thought was necessary to get out of the cage, meaning these detainees told their jailers whatever the fuck they could to get released. Specifically, the official cited information and evidence of connections to criminal agents in Afghanistan and elements of the Russian government as sources for the intelligence community's assessment. Without any additional corroboration, such reporting is notoriously unreliable. Yeah, you think. You fucking think. So there you have it. How many months after the Russia is paying bounties to have U.S. troops killed are they now admitting that basically it was 100% false? Not basically, it was 100% false. I mean, this is months later, and you see some small reporting about it, because if they were to do some major reporting about it, if it were to be wall-to-wall 24/7 for 5 days like the Bounties story was, then you would have to have all of those fucking anchors, Rachel Maddow and Brian Williams and fucking all of Fox News and every last one of these people, CNN, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, would have to come on TV and go, hey, let's spend the hour talking about how we were fucking so wrong, so dumb, so naive, to say the least. I mean, of course, the truth is they're not naive. They don't care whether it's propaganda or not. Their job is to push the state narrative. So they don't give a fuck whether it turns out to be false 6 weeks later or not. Those of us with any goddamn sense in our heads knew it was false and fucking said, oh, really? This is coming from anonymous sources inside the CIA? Huh. Wonder what the odds are that they made up that shit to make sure troops weren't withdrawn. Anyway, if they really covered it, if they did a lot of coverage of it, then they'd have to sit there for an hour. Now, they might do one little pinprick coverage here or there. A headline will run across the bottom on a ticker. Hey, by the way, we were wrong for fucking past 4 months. But, of course, they won't do that. So this is the classic mainstream media. We gave you a garbage CIA talking point. We also pointed to others and said, you're fucking, anybody who doubted it, oh, you're a fucking Russian asset. You're a Russian agent because you doubt this story. You're anti-American. But yet, here we are. What do you know? Turns out to be false, as was fucking all of Russiagate. Yet again, you see it all collapse. I mean, honestly, it's like, how many times can they do this and people will believe it? How many times can our mainstream media go, hey, we told you that thing. Yeah, totally not true. And people will fall for it. Like how are we just going to do this forever and ever and ever? Or is there some point where people will go, yeah, it turns out they're just full of shit. This doesn't mean Trump's not full of shit and Biden's not full of shit. They are too. People need to learn all of these people are full of shit. Fucking figure it out. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Let's keep fighting.